Welcome to Pagan Crafting. I'm your host, Cara. Today we're going to make Ogham Rune moon necklaces. Yes, we are. And we're going to make these moon shaped out of polymer clay with a touch of UV resin to shine them up with some gorgeous paint colors. Join me today as we have some fun making some Celtic tree moon necklaces. Okay, so what I'm starting off here is polymer clay, and I've switched to sculpty clay. I found it's very easy to knead and work, and it's easy. You don't have to warm it up for like 10-15 minutes before you start using it. So I don't have a rolling pin, so I just use a mason jar, and I'm rocking in here. I'm using my circle maker to cut out the size that I'm looking for my necklace piece. And I'm going to make a moon piece. So we're looking for 2 different sizes of circles to play with here. And cutting out the same one too. I am using an X-Acto knife because I do want it to go all the way down. And it makes just a nicer line to use a little X-Acto knife with this clay. You can use a straight edge, but it'll kind of rip and tear as it goes, versus this will make a nice little cut. And pops right out super easy. Okay, so now I'm thinking where we're gonna have our moon shape here. I want it large enough I'm going to be able to enjoy the opening, but also to be able to put some little eyelet loops as I have right here into it. I'm going to put them in while the clay is soft, and if they do happen to fall out, that's cool. I'll be able to like super glue them in. But usually when you put them in soft, you actually have to unscrew them to get out. It's actually quite nice. They stay in there pretty good. There we go. So now we have those 2 in. That's where we're going to connect our necklace to after we've baked our polymer clay. I have these little silicone kind of rubberish style tips that I like to use. I'm using this to blend out the lines that I made from either rolling or from where the circle maker had attached overlays. So just working that out. So it looks like some of the plastic I cut into the circle, so I'm just taking that off. And I'm circling down the edges here, smoothing down the edges on just the top side of the moon. You can do that with your fingertips just as well. I was just using this in the beginning. And then I found just getting in there with my fingertips works even just actually a little bit easier. And I'm going and smoothing all the edges from all the sides. Using just a little tips here and there, fanning off any excess piece here. This is one of my favorite ones, this silicone piece, and I'm going to use this one later to help me engrave into the Ogham piece that I'm going to be working with here. I'm just taking off some of the little excess clay and smoothing it out. I see it just little bits on the edging that I don't want that to be rough on if it's on the skin. So after you're done smoothing everything out, make sure your eyelets are nice and straight. And we're going to draw a line in the dead center of your moon. And we're going to be writing some Ogham runes on top of that. So what I would like to do is spell the word creative. Now, a word from our sponsor, and that sponsor is me. So today we're gonna have some Ogham alphabet, just super simple. We're gonna have the name of the tree, the letter it represents, and then with the rune, how to write that. So when you see me off camera writing, this is what I'm using. I'm going to include this on my Patreon, and you can get this on my Etsy store as well. So just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to use a Sharpie marker over top. Starting from a middle of the rune so I can make sure this is nice and even on both sides. And you're going to use either your X-Acto knife, a back of something sharp. You can use a little knife. You could use a Jiffy marker or a Sharpie marker like I'm using. But as you can see here, like it's still imprinting great for me, but it's not, the ink is not laying down. I'm going to be painting over this anyway. So just going back in with my little tool here to define the lines a little bit more. So we're going to be painting over this. You're not going to see any of the black lines anyway. That was just more for your reference. You can see where I was going with this. And just defining the lines here and there and getting it ready to throw in the oven. So I'm just going to cut it out, throw in the oven. This is sculpted clay, so this is 275 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. Now it's all cooked and baked. We're ready to paint. But I find some rough edges, so I'm just going to trim that off. Feeling with my fingers around the edges if there's any more. I don't want, if this sits on somebody's chest and I don't want it sharp, you know. So throwing down, I would like red to fade into orange to yellow to white. So I'm going to use my main color, and that's orange first. And always paint the background so it looks cool. Make it all look professional. Dabbing in some saffron yellow. This is very close to like a beautiful sunflower yellow, just a little richer. Now what I'm doing is I'm just overlaying and tapping in the color. I'm not using water to clean off the brush. I'm just wiping it off as tightly as I can with a paper towel. And thus it leaves some of the previous color in the bristles, and then when you tap in the next color, it's a beautiful blend that way. And it's more of an airbrush kind of a look, like a really soft blend. And take your time when painting. I have this video sped up a little bit, so it's just a little easier to watch, but I am taking my time with the blends. Now I have a beautiful burgundy I'm laying over top of that gorgeous mandarin orange. It gives like a fire look to it, don't you think? What colors would you choose if you painted one of these? My daughter chose purple to blue to light blue, and she chose the word courage. I'm using the reds and oranges and golds fading into the whites for my creative. And I wonder what invokes for you when you want to use one power word if you're going to make a necklace like this. What would be the one power word that you choose? I'm going to use some silver here. Now you see this is a blue one that I designed for my daughter. Again, it says courage. We're going to use a silver inlay on that one. I think it'll look cool in the moon. And mine, the fire, I'm going to use a copper penny. Look, copper penny metallic. I think that'll look brilliant together. Now this is where you want to use a super fine, thin, tiny brush and really go slow. Take your time. Now what I'm doing is I'm highlighting the line that goes down the center of the piece first. And then I'm going to be building up the lines of the different letters that spell the word courage on this piece. Just going as slow as I can. I'm just going to speed this part up here. And if you make a mistake, just wipe it off super quick. I wound up having to use a bit of my water and my finger to wipe that off quick, but actually the lines just stay silver inside your inlay that you did, and it doesn't, I didn't get silver on the top layer, so it was pretty cool. Happy little mistakes right here. Doesn't matter, keep it trucking. Just gingerly going through the lines, taking your time. You could also use a silver metallic Sharpie marker to go over top of this too. Those have a nice fine point to them too. If that's easier for you to do, keep it lighter than this finer paintbrush. Now we're going to go to the copper. I think the copper will just pop out very subtle against the oranges and yellows and reds. It'll be enough, like by this camera light it's picking up cool, yeah, but I found on certain angles it didn't shine, so I think that'll be a nice little addition to the piece. Again, take your time. Finishing off the circle, the lines that come all the way around to the top. I have them extended out just a little bit higher than the letters themselves. And our last letter, C. So we're gonna let those dry for a little bit now. And after our inlay paint is dry, now we're going to be painting a thin UV resin layer coat on them. This is going to shine them up. This is going to bring out the colors of the paint. And I'm just using a super cheap brush because I'm going to be tossing this brush afterwards. So I did do a bead of glue or a bead of UV resin along the top, and then I brush that out super thin on both of them. Now you don't want it to blob down the sides because it will harden and you'll have to cut it off. So just a nice thin coating, and if you want to make it look even glassier and thicker, then do a few layers between cooking and under the UV light. Yeah, this really brings out your color scheme this way. So the first we're going to paint around the sides, and then we'll do the bottom after. Now it says to cook it under the UV light and for about 2 to 4 minutes. So I'm going to be doing 4 minutes up to 6 minutes. Depending on how thick the layers go, but each one I'll run the light twice, so that'll be a 4-minute intervals. The back side and the sides I'm just going to do 4 minutes, and then I'll probably do 6 minutes for the top layer with the UV light for the top layer of the front of the necklace piece. So I'm going a little thicker and I want a glossier finish to it. I don't want anybody to know they're actually polymer clay. So all the sides are complete now, and what I have this on is a parchment paper, and you can use a wax paper too. I find that really nice to work on, and it doesn't stick to it as much when you're dealing with it. Also, it's a super easy cleanup and it saves your working area. And the second light that I picked was the 2-minute setting, so I'm going to do that double the time. Now that that's done, again is a second time. These are ready now. They are cured, they are good to go, but I found them just a little harder by the next day. So now we're going to do the bottom sides to make so it's not a flat color. I'm just refolding my parchment paper. And this one I'm doing just a very, very thin layer. It's going to be against clothing, but I just want it to match the front so it looks super sharp. It gives it that more pro look to it too. Always finish up your work, always paint the sides of the canvas, and if you can, the back. Unless it's going to be hanging against a wall, then don't worry about the back, but always paint the sides. There we go. That'll even shine out the back side of the colors that I was doing too. A little extra. And again, we're going to do 4 minutes for that. Now that everything's cured, ready to go, we're going to grab some little hoops here. And we're going to need some necklace chain. And my daughter's is blue and she wants hers to be shorter, more of around where her collarbone sits. So that's me measuring. And then I'm going to just trim off the edge here. So we're going to have my length for her. You can choose whatever length you wish. She would like her necklace shorter. I'm going to go a little bit longer, so it sits lower on my chest, and she wants hers more of around her neck and her collarbone. So using my board here, each square is 1 inch, and I like to have one that is 1 inch shorter than the other because I want her to be able to adjust this necklace. So we're going to be adding some loops together and extending the necklace on the side that is shorter, and that'll give her the chance to be able to connect the lobster claw hook and release, and that'll be able to extend it longer or shorter if she wants it to, where she wants it to sit. So we're going to start bringing these little loops together first. We're going to put 3 together at a time. We're going to be bringing in 7 to 8 loops. So we're going to loop first is 3 together. So you just open up one eye loop and add 2 to it. Close that up, and now you have a link of 3. Saves you some time. So now we just make sure the link of 3 is all the little loops are closed. And we're going to do that again. So again, 1 loop, add 2 loops to it, and close. Now we have 2 of those ready, and we're just going to add 1 in between, and now we'll have 7. So it saves you time having to do 1 at a time. And we're going to add that you just extended onto the shorter chain piece that we created, that we cut. There we go. So adding the chain to our loops here that we just created. And then now that she'll be able to add to that anytime. Now to the other side, we're going to put on a lobster claw. Again, one little loop. And this loop now we're going, oops, sorry, wrong one. Got to bring it back to my daughters. There we go. We're adding one chain onto the loop, onto the blue moon. Again, opening up one more loop, adding our lobster claw this time, and our next one. So we want the loops that we did when we formed the 7 loops together, the larger one, we want that farthest away from the moon. That's going to attach to the lobster claws. I find a little piece of resin that was a little sharp on the side, so I'm going to fix that up in a momentarily. So there's the one necklace so far. Yeah, see how it lines up perfectly. Lovely. That one piece is bugging me. I can feel that it's a little rough. So if that happens, you do have to take an X-Acto and take that off. And now it's going to be dull. It's going to have a flat look compared to all the other shine of the piece. So you will have to go back in with your resin and your brush, touch that up with your resin, and then bake it again under the UV light. And then you won't even know that it's been touched up. And we're going to repeat again. Now I'm measuring this around my neck right now, and I cut a longer piece. You can see it's all one big piece, so I thought I'm just going to take it up the middle. I'm not going to have mine shorter. Well, thank you for chilling out with me today. I was wondering, if you're going to make one like this, what colors would you go with, and what's your power word that you would like to invoke on your necklace? As always, I want to wish you an absolutely magical day.